When late-night television's undisputed monarch passed away without a viewing or memorial service Hollywood treatment, without any Black Lines vehicular traffic, a global forum that bid farewell. However, amid the stillness that came next, with a name that resounded more than every other, the guest's name was anticipated. Nostalgia from his distant past endeavored to remove. This individual was who? And as to why did their backstory loom over the lost in Johnny Carson's biography? On January 23, 2005, the individual responsible for put the United States to sleep for 3 decades departed this world. The late Johnny Carson, the unrivaled master of the late-night tranquility at Sinai's Medical Center in the City of Angels. The stated reason was lung disease, caused by his fight against emphysema. In age, he was 79 years old. No relation of his, Jeff Sotz made a clear and unequivocal announcement. He was encircled by his grieving family can't be quantified. Nothing will happen. Celebration of life. It was decided startling, yet appropriately so. For once upon a time, there was a man named, entertaining millions of people night after night. Johnny Carson was relentlessly private. His co-host and friend, Dick Cavett, remembered an incident where socially Carson's unease, the way he would struggle to strike up a conversation with just a small number of admirers beyond the studio's walls. Noel McGrath, over 30 years, his faithful companion. Johnny was comfortable. The speaker famously added, opposite a crowd of 20 million, and somewhat uneasy when confronted with when he won. Many people said he was the most influential individual in public life. Accordingly, in his passing, he finally achieved the solitude he had long yearned for. After his cremation, his wife, Alexis, was bestowed with ashes, the moss. Without it, the general meeting, nowhere to stage his acquaintances and co-workers to swap anecdotes. Whoever witnessed his last performance was a staggering 50 million individuals remained this planet with a few off witnesses. There was solemn, global mourning in Manurs in which it might be effective. A deluge of tributes arrived from across the most prestigious roles. Bush Sr. a solid and reassuring figure, according to Bush being present. Jay Leno, the host who succeeded him on The Tonight Show, he was hailed as the gold standard. In addition to David Letterman, the guy regarded by Carson as his genuine successor, paid what was arguably the most heartfelt tribute, stating, "Those of us who followed are those who claim to be someone they are not." Himself once more. His admirers left him notes and flowers. Facing his Hollywood Walk of Fame star, notoriety in Johnny Carson Park, located across the street from NBC's headquarters, he'd been a magician for quite some time. Nevertheless, when faced with no funeral, how could anyone possibly be invited? In the course of a lifetime that includes countless family, friends, and even some formidable adversaries who were spoken about after his untimely demise would have deeply stunned me, dear readers. The question is not about how isn't there, yet someone was missing from what a long time. The unannounced visitor wasn't the individual who came that day. The experience was a long-lost bond between friends and a painful betrayal that shaped the both of their lifetimes. It was a tale of the singular Johnny Carson I will never be able to forgive. So that you can comprehend the conclusion, you must return to the first step. Prior to her role as a housewife, Joan Rivers was a woman who was failing humorous person. When the 1960s rolled around, she had worked for seedy clubs for a long time in Greenwich Village in New York City, going by a headgear that occasionally failed to materialize back. Having worked and slept in her vehicle, work as attempt to cover expenses, and even found away from the Jack Barr remake of The Tonight Show following a single appearance. She had tried out for the role of Johnny Carson and have appeared on The Tonight Show 7 times, without success, without fail. In 1965, when he was the young man of 31, many people working there were assuring her that her professional life had already over. The following night, in February, day of 1965, it was a booking for Mercy, something that her boss set up as a benefit from his representation of Bill as well. Mr. Cosby. Upon that, Rivers stepped out poised, as if it were her final opportunity. However, a remarkable event transpired. It was one of those. They reflected afterwards that evenings when everything falls into place. The everything is falling into place, and themey audience. We simply became friends. She was hilarious. Her energy was palpable, and Theonly, the most important person, noticed. Once her set was over, She settled into a chair and prominent seat adjacent to the presenter. Johnny leaning in, Carson uttered the words that would modify her life indefinitely. On he informed her that it will air nationally. You're going to be a star, he said, recalled turning to look behind her, questioning the persons with whom he might be chatting. She did define the dynamic between television hosts them as being utterly enchanted, regarding which instant a connection was formed. Carter failed to please, just let her go. He turned into her hero, her guide. According to her, for the foreseeable future, he gave me my professional life. Ever since that fateful night, Joan Rivers was a staple of Jimmy Fallon's program. She did played in approximately 100 games across upcoming 20 years. The playful exchanges they had while broadcasting became famous for. The cool guy was Hyman, unstoppable monarch, and she was the incisive, entertaining court jester with the ability to make him laugh till he sobs. He had faith in her. As Rivers began her own brief daytime in 1968, her chat show host was Johnny Carson, first celebrity attendee, a huge demonstrate backing. Her part in the program continued to expand. She started working as a fill-in host for Carson's shows her time off, and by 1983, finally announced as the long-term host of the show. Host of guests. I was in charge off Greek confidence. While Johnny wasn't around, she had possession of the kingdom's keys. It was her, from both the general populations and the preparation, royalty, and business. From her dedication to Carson was unwavering. She did thereafter reported receiving numerous presents the idea of hosting her own show on years. Yet I consistently declined their offers to hang around for the rest of the show. However, right now the one nuance that shifts the focus. For every one of their on-air friendliness, the connection was essentially qualified expert. It was submerged in the scorching lit by the studios above and facing the video equipment. The author, Rivers, stated, the connection was captured in all its glory on film in before the United States. And even at that time, when the advertisement ends, as soon as the power went out, and we were at a loss as to what do another. This wasn't due to the fact that felt animosity toward one another. This arose from the renowned reclusiveness of Carson. He was somebody who isolated himself by erecting barriers. They didn't have a really close relationship. Companions who confided in one another established a chain of command inside his field. The monarch, the generous one who had found granted her the honor of being a member of his court. Also, the power dynamic that is implicit is the crucial to comprehending the savage treachery to follow. By the mid-1980s, the surface that Joan Rivers walked on started Tozo, she could feel unsteady. She had felt safe in her position as Carson's stepmother number 2. However, as time went on, reform. With the signing of a new NBC signs Rivers to a 2-year deal, but all I got was a 1-year contract. Understanding. The message was crystal obvious to her, wrote. There's only one possible interpretation. The authorities were unsure of my after some time had passed. Then, the harder hit. Notice started making the rounds at NBC listing entertainers whose names are being contemplated potentially serving as long-term alternatives to Johnny in the end, when he chose to quit their jobs. Rivers, who had cut more trees, sits on that chair for more time than anyone else. Johnny thought her name would stand out from the crowd. However, when she spotted it, she was devastated. Her identity wasn't in any way. She arrived at a painful NBC would never air the conclusion hosted a lady. She believed in her function. Taking on the role of guest host provided a secure avenue for the connect with others to showcase her skills without considering her a genuine rival or prince or princess to succeed. The king precise point of exposure when a fresh new participant joined the fray. Station known as Fox was getting ready. Toadbutt and its leaders, which comprised the goal of Barry Diller's ambitious splash. They walked up to Joan Rivers while carrying a proposition that could not be turned down. A late night with her own show, The Late Program, featuring Joan Rivers, that would run at the precise same hour right across from The Tonight Show, also known as the astronomical sum of $10 million, double or even triple her salary from NBC. Rivers had to deal with a choice. Her allegiance was with Johnny, the guy who had created her, but she experienced cast aside and treated with contempt by the company he was in. Employee of her spouse and director, Edgar Rosenberg, bestowed upon her a challenging counsel. He cautioned her against saying something to say to Carson up until the agreement with the deal with Fox was negotiated and signed. Thinking was grounded in icy, hard reasoning using Hollywood standards. Other comedians with hosted The Tonight Show on a regular basis and in time to begin competing programs were frequently without delay removed from the show hosted by Carson. If she informed Johnny and then there was a delay because the Fox agreement fell through logic, she may end up with absolutely nothing. The fact that they were both worried that Thief Carson has the ability to create one subdued phone conversation and enter contract throughout the lead up to the event, she continued townspoken, a choice she would eventually make feel guilty about forever, weekend just before the big revelation. Word got out that what occurred after that is totally dependent on who you think. As two very separate conflicting accounts surfaced, it shocked Joan Rivers to hear that someone else told him about it, immediately attempted to contact him via phone in order to tow her explanation. She claimed to have succeeded in getting him to inform him that she was departing over the phone, so she could host her own Fox show. He stated she dialed his number, but he did not answer. Returned, assuming that it was cut off. He ended the call just a second later. Interminable period. They would never again the airwaves once more. Johnny Carson's rendition was dissimilar. He asserted that the phone contact was never made. He informed others that his acquaintance told him about her new program. News release, similar to others in the globe. He was caught entirely off guard, trapped and deceived by the one he trusted supported for more than 2 decades. Why was his response so strong? Other men humorists had departed to pursue performances, and although there may have been under pressure, Carson frequently extended his grace. Rivers held her own belief system, one that go far beyond just professional rivalry. Afterwards, sentenced as follows. I believe he truly felt since I used to be a woman who was merely his, that I refused to abandon him. It seemed like you are my everything, and I'm glad I found you. Real estate. In his opinion, that was a feminine figure. He was up against me. I'm a man stepping out to compete, and Carson's world was full of drive. A departing woman was being traitorous. Someone had disobeyed the king, and he would be furious and devastating. Among all of Johnny Carson's influential TV personality, using his persuade him to punish her any way he could might be able to. As a starting point, the most as a result, she was promptly gets expelled from The Tonight Show for good show. Throughout the remainder of Carson's term, and for many years following his retirement, she was kicked out of the studio after her second residence. Nevertheless, things proceeded considerably even farther afield. Carson developed what served as a de facto blacklist. People Hogus starred on Late Night with Seth Meyers. Joan Rivers' role was informed that they wouldn't appear on tonight's show. Athletes and their representatives, that was an easy decision. You might continue the debut program on the upstart. You may join a network, or you can use the most significant and impactful performance in television archive. Almost all picked Carson. Waters discovered it was almost incredibly difficult to secure appearances by famous people. On NBC businessman, who is also her personal friend, purportedly told her directly, "We are on their way to ruining you," first airing on October 9, 1986, and encountered difficulties almost quickly. Not having any A-listers there and having to face the entire power of Carson's viewership monster, the program faltered in its second season. The settings. The situation was escalating. The husband of Rivers, Edgar, was a producer on the program, had ongoing conflicts with the executives of Fox. Following a brief within a year, Joan was granted an firm demand. Depose her spouse. She did turn down the offer. Accordingly, Fox fired both of them. The dishonor suffered by the profession tremendous, but it was on the verge of becoming in the background of an unfathomable personal unfortunate event. When the show bombed, the enormous amounts of debt that they had accrued, and the tremendous strain that the public decline imposed upon the wedding. 3 months subsequent, Tara let go, and Edgar Rosenberg acted independently life. Amidst the lowest point of her existence, it was just Joan Rivers. From her career had collapsed. The woman's spouse was gone. And all the while, from the guy who, at one point, had been her staunchest advocate, complete stillness pervaded. John C. Carson never contacted. No note was ever sent by him. He was never said anything about sad news. This one deed, or absence of the feud into something amicable. The Hollywood feud escalated into a deep and sorrowful tale. It showed an aspect of Carson his devoted fans will never saw. A man with such a profound animosity that it trumped all moral considerations, feeling empathy. In retrospect, Rivers state, detailing the total solitude she endured to escape the realm she formerly controlled. The experience was rather than being banished to Siberia by Stalin. The monarch's sentence had been carried out, and it was without exception. We should go back to that now. A peaceful January day in 2005. In light of recent events, words got out about Johnny Carson's passing. This long-running, still unresolved struggle with it all started with Joan Rivers who thought about it at some point. Her character wasterable specter that loomed over his legacy, Thea's single unfinished business that the boss would be unable to secure. Unless there is a genuine burial, her narrative evolved into the funeral he was never given. She embodied a visitor who did not expect. How she felt about his passage was just as intricate and unprocessed as what they have accomplished historically. None of it was easy expression of sorrow. Her audience instead feedback consisted of a complex web offered, animosity, and a shocking level of esteem amongst professionals. During a single, she was quite forthright in the interview accusing him of being a cruel, yet next thing she knew, she'd throw in that, in addition to being the brightest, most unorthodox man ever, no one ever gets near him. The agony persisted even after almost 20 years with no word. She did fail to convey any remorse for boarding the stage. Although she was sad about passing up the chance in exchange for the grace that Carson had neglected. During an interview that was delivered just before her own demise, she envisioned an alternative conclusion to their narrative. Just what Johnny she felt obligated to say. Following my departure from the program, and once my employment at Fox ended and Edgar took his own life, Johnny Otto had invited me back to the show and instructed me to inquire of me, "Where have you been?" It may have resulted in no newspaper each, and we ought to have quickly grasped. It might have been a graceful act of forgiveness from the most refined TV host. Still, not a single day passed, not even years later. Once he passed away, Rivers continued to look to reach a satisfying conclusion. During an episode in Joan and Melissa, her reality show, with her expert knowledge, Joan went to the final resting place for Carson laid to rest. Film crews trailed behind her as she ultimately attempted to face the individual who excommunicated her from his life, saying in a last, to the void of space, poignant endeavor to achieve harmony. For this reason, Joan Rivers was the genuine memorial service for Johnny Carson. He had withdrawn into his very outside of work following retirement in 1992, never addressing the feud in public. She had no choice but to endure the company of repercussions exposed. Over the course of many years, only she had documented their shattered bond, revealing her perspective on both in person and via interviews, and all he had to offer was quiet, the time of his passing, her voice, and the resounding echoes of his previous. The unannounced visitor wasn't a standing within a house of worship. It was the sad, inevitable, and forever etched in memory as recollection of the one individual he supported and the one he would never be able to let go of. Ultimately, Johnny Carson was able to get the departure he had always desired. Unfortunately, no monumental tribute, but that void was filled with the narrative of the one he would never be able to let go of. The most surprising visitor towards the conclusion of he was nothing more than a lifeless body, knowledge. The knowledge of a companionship hemade from just one line of text and demolished at the touch of a button, an unspoken last testament to the complete devotion to him and to the unpardonable cost of treachery into the late-night king's court.